Personally, I just really dislike the word diet. It just annoys me because, diet implies something that you're going to do for a small time period, whereas really what you're talking about is a lifestyle change. And I think that's what we all need to think about is it's okay to have a diet for a little while if you are trying to do a specific intervention, but really how do you make this part of your lifestyle so you're not always struggling and yo-yoing, right?
Diet translates from Greek language is actually a way of eating. So a way of eating, a lifestyle eating, yes, something that is nourishing for you, is benefiting, also delicious, very important when it comes to my dietary recommendations, and is beneficial for you and your family.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Extend podcast. I'm so excited to be here today with one of my favorite people that I've met recently, Ella Davar. She's a registered dietitian, and she just has an incredible message that I really felt that I wanted our audience to hear and to learn from you, Ella. So thank you so much for joining us.
Dr. Shah, this is such an incredible opportunity to meet you and your audience. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. So, we've been following each other on social media for quite a while, and you say so many incredible things that I really want to hone in on. But I wanted to just start off the podcast with just a few quick questions just so people can know who you are to start with and kind of know what direction the conversation is going. So first of all, what's your favorite topic in health, and what do you love to talk about? What are you passionate about?
I'm passionate about my love for food. A lot of us love food, but I love food more than you do because
I'll bet you on that one.
I dedicated my life, my career to the love of food. I became a dietitian and nutrition and food expert because I wanted to figure out for myself how I could play this food game on my terms. As a young model in New York City, I struggled with dieting. I tried every diet, and it felt restrictive. It felt so confusing when I would hear all this confusing advice from different health experts. And that's when I said, I'm going to become a nutrition expert, and I'm going to learn for myself what it is that creates the best nourishment for me, for my cells, and for my organs. And that's what I'm doing now. And I'm teaching others, my clients, on how to do the same for themselves.
I love that. And personally, I just really dislike the word diet. It just annoys me because, diet implies something that you're going to do for a small time period, whereas really what you're talking about is a lifestyle change. And I think that's what we all need to think about is it's okay to have a diet for a little while if you are trying to do a specific intervention, but really how do you make this part of your lifestyle so you're not always struggling and yo-yoing, right?
I mean, look, we all have a routine and discipline, right? That's how we get ahead in life. And diet has gained a bad reputation over the years because of the fad dieting, all the rules and restrictions that we hear. Right. But in reality, we do need, as I said, routine and discipline.
Absolutely.
We do love food, but when we wake up in the morning and we need to get ahead in life, we need to get our children to school, we need to know exactly what's best for us, how we implement it, how we make it happen, how we nourish our cells and our hormones, and how we get on with our lives. So
reframing the word diet from a specific time period to something that's more of a lifestyle, I think is what we're both on the same page about.
I think diet translates from Greek language is actually a way of eating. So a way of eating, a lifestyle eating, yes, something that is nourishing for you, is benefiting, also delicious, very important when it comes to my dietary recommendations, and is beneficial for you and your family.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. And next question for you is, if there's one thing that you wish everyone knew, that you wish that all your audience, that everyone knew this one thing that you find a lot of people don't really know, what is that one thing?
That food is medicine. That's how I changed my career from Wall Street to wellness, because there's a dietitian that changed the way I looked at food. A lot of us, and when I was younger, I looked at food as an enemy. This makes me fat. This makes me bloated. This is good for me. This is too fatty. This is too many calories. Avocado is good for me, but it's too fatty, So there's all these labels that we put into food. This is too processed. This is whole foods, but I don't know how to eat that. This is too healthy. This is too lame, or something that's bland. Right. That's what I meant to say. But in reality, and this creates a negative approach a negative mindset around food. But that's, I think, my mission is to educate a younger population group on how to eat healthier and changing their mindset that looking at food as your medicine. And if you look at food like that, you start looking for what's best for me, what actually makes me feel good. When you focus on that side of the coin, actually, and that brings more joy to the dieting, to the way of eating, to the lifestyle, and to the way of nourishing yourself and your family. And that's what I would want more people to know.
It's so true. I think if you're struggling with your weight, if you're struggling with gut health issues, you do start looking at food as the enemy. And it's really not. Food is medicine. Food is there to nourish you, to make you feel good, to make you happy, and to also just make you a healthy human being. It keeps you alive. And so I think you're absolutely right. I think it's really the choices that we make within food and the dosing that we use that makes food the enemy for some people, and just reframing. Once again, reframing. It's all about reframing, right, for people?
Yeah, and the emotions that we attach to it. The first chapter in the book that I wrote actually before it addresses hormones and DNA and gut health, it addresses emotions.
Yeah.
That when we are little, when we grow up, the only thing that we could control is food intake. And very often, that's when the problematic relationship and the view and the mindset of food begins.
Yes.
That's when, if God forbid, you're not like anyone else, you think that food restrictions could help you to get thinner or leaner. And that's when I actually, part of the method that I created, I lead guided meditations for my clients. That after everything they learn about their metabolism, about the anti-inflammatory diet, I struggled in my practice to answer this question for myself and for people. Why do we do what we do when we know what we know? And that's when some of the emotions that are attached to it, for example, pleasure. For some people who work really hard all day, at the end of the day, food is the only source of pleasure. And that's when they tend to overeat and overindulge during those dinners. And here comes the dietitian that tells you, don't eat too much at a dinner.
Right.
What are you going to tell to that dietitian? You know what? No, you can't stop me. If this is the only source of pleasure, that the emotion that is being attached to the food, it's hard to disentangle that relationship. And that's when I help my clients with the meditations to really look at it. And maybe at this particular case, differentiate different sorts of pleasure in life and prioritize those before you get to the level of, when it's late at night or late during the day and dinner is the only source of pleasure that you allowed yourself throughout the whole day. So emotions is one of the things that I address.
So that's so interesting because you're right. Emotion is so tied to what our diet is, what our food choices are. And you make that actually part of your dietary advice, your nutrition advice, as you bring in the mindset piece of this, which I think that's so important. Mindset around your entire diet, all of your food choices, that is to come first almost. So before you make any actual dietary changes, it's trying to find you delve into the patient's mindset around the food too.
It kind of comes last. When people come to me with for specific advice,
right.
And then we get into the calories, we get into the protocol, the meal planning, we get into the testing and looking at deficiencies of what their body needs. And then we get into the mindfulness, and that usually the cherry on the top. And very often some of my high-performing clients, they'll be like, when we clean up their supplements and their diet and their protocols, they'll be like, you know what? It's the breath work that helped me at the end. That's what I hear a lot. Yeah,
that's incredible. That's truly game changing. Yeah. So my next question is about you talk a lot about gut health. I love, you have chapters dedicated in your book towards gut health.
Yes.
What is the one thing about the gut that you wish people knew about?
Well, your gut is your second brain, and we hear this a lot, and it's actually true. And what I would want people to know about is how it affects your entire well-being, how it affects your brain functioning, your mood, how it affects your levels of energy and overall metabolism. Because when we eat food, and we've all heard, you are what you eat. And this oversimplified statement is actually true, but there's a lot of processes that go on inside of our body, but they all begin with the gut because that's where food stays for up to 18 to 24 hours, and that's where it gets fermented, that's where it gets broken down, digested, and absorbed. And most of us take all of these functions of our gut for granted, right? We just enjoy the piece of food, and then we don't think about it until we see it in the toilet bowl, or maybe even then we don't think about it. But you'll be surprised surprised that the lifestyle choices that we make, specifically stress and how that affects our gut health. And if we are exposing ourselves to too much stress, that shuts down the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for gut health and gut functioning and enzymatic sufficiency. And I test these things for my clients, and I see a lot of enzymatic insufficiencies. You don't hear me talking about it on social media because not everyone needs enzymes. But people who are leading highly stressful lifestyle and deadlines and not enough sleep, that's where it all begins. It begins with the gut health and gut functionality going away, because that's when your body is not able to prioritize those things. When we're in parasympathetic nervous system, that's what's responsible for rest and digest mode. If we don't prioritize that, if we're always trending on the stress response, which is sympathetic nervous system, your body's just not able to prioritize those things. So to answer your question, what I would want more people to know about is that everything begins with your gut health. And if your body's not able to digest and absorb, your liver is not getting much and all of your organs are not getting much. So that's where it all begins.
Right. Right. You mentioned something that not a lot of people talk about is enzymatic insufficiencies. We talk a lot about the microbiome, and I think that's like the hot button topic of the day.
And inflammation.
Right, exactly. But enzymatic insufficiency, your gut starts at your mouth and ends on the other side, right?
Yes.
So there's a lot going on beyond just what's going on in your colon, right? And so do you try to assess in your patients kind of from the top down what's going on with your gut health?
So there's 5 factors or different aspects that create an optimal gut health. And comprehensive stool test that I do, and I think every single person, at least once in their lifetime, should look into what's going on underneath their belly and specifically in their stool. And the 5 aspects that we test for.
What stool test do you like to use?
Genova
stool test,
or GI maps, but I prefer Genova. It's just easier to interpret and follow up like a year later.
And where can people listening get these stool tests?
These specific ones you can't get without a healthcare professional because you need someone to interpret the results. I mean, that's what I offer, and I'm sure you guys do too at the Next Health and in my practice. But I think there's some online practices, but mostly you have to get a practitioner to order it for you.
Right. There's so many gut health stool testing companies out there that just there's no one really interpreting the results for you.
Yes.
I think it's just so confusing, and the science is so still as infancy, really. There's still so much that we need to know about the science of what's going on with your microbiome because it's so incredibly complex.
I have a lot to say about those tests that are marketed to consumer.
Yeah.
The same test for like food sensitivities and intolerance, which gained bad reputations, like how it's inaccurate, doesn't mean much because of some of those labs that are marketing straight to consumer that are just not doing a good job interpreting. But the labs that I use that are very conservative, and then you can't get them unless you have a healthcare professional because they're diagnostic. And those are I've created some of the best results for my clients to be able to create personalized results. But I didn't finish saying about the 5 aspects
I'm excited.
of gut health.
Yeah, I want to hear about the 5 aspects of gut health.
You mentioned enzymatic insufficiency. So the 5 aspects of gut health, number 1 is inflammation. And we all heard that's been trending everywhere in social media, that to lower inflammation in our gut. And this is the inflammation of the organ itself, the gut lining. Then the second one is gut microbiome. It's the balance, the microbial makeup of the pathogenic or the bad bacteria or the good bacteria. So we measure that. The third one is actually digestion or indigestion. That's where we measure enzymes, pancreatic enzymes, as well as bile to see if your body is actually able to break down nutrients, specifically fats and proteins. And then the fourth one, which is very exciting, is infections. That's what is not everyone talking about, including myself. I don't like to bring it up on social media, but it's parasites, it's fungi, and yeast. And the truth is, not a lot of people have parasites, but those who don't, they really see the difference when we do the herbal antiparasitic treatment. And that the fifth one is metabolic imbalances. That's where your gut is. Not a lot of people know that the gut is able to metabolize things and create things like vitamin K and short-chain fatty acids. Right. And we need to be able to see if your gut is producing enough of those.
Right. So I love giving people like 5 steps or 5 aspects because it really helps break things down for people. And, for people that are listening out there, your gut health can become an incredibly complex topic, but not everyone needs to focus on all 5 of these.
Yes.
You just need to know if there's a problem or not so
Exactly.
that you can then hone in on that problem, right? And so part of this is working with a practitioner such as yourself that pays attention to all 5 of these aspects
Yes.
of your gut health.
Yes.
So
testing for all 5 of them and to see. And very often how I begin my test interpretation session, I was like, good news, you got no inflammation. You have great ability to digest and break down things. And there's an area for improvement. That's how it usually plays out. In my population group that comes to me, mostly my clients are people who are doing all the right things, but still find themselves spinning their wheels, and they're looking for optimization. And that's where we come in, and we're able to see some of the results that they really see the difference.
yeah, that's fantastic. So other than the stool testing, what other testing are you using in your practice?
So another is a big one, which I know you love, is CGM, which I learned about maybe like 8 years ago when I was studying in Tel Aviv and Tel Aviv University, where they were studying the CGM, the continuous glucose monitoring for people, and seeing how personalized dietary recommendations and nutrition protocol can actually create better difference than standardized, even Mediterranean diet. That's where I learned about it first, and I started using it around like 4 or 5 years ago when I worked at a clinic. And I think nothing trumps the 30 minutes after effect after you eat the food. Because most of us, when we eat food, what are we thinking about? It's this number on the scale that we need to move. How often does it move? Like maybe once a week, you'll see the results, right? Or it's the biomarkers, right, on the blood test that the doctor has to review, right? So the feedback loop is so long.
Right.
That's when I use CGM for educational purposes, because most of the clients that I work with, either pre-diabetic or healthier, like for weight loss, I love using CGM for weight loss. And it helps my clients to see what really is going on underneath their skin after they eat certain food choices, and specifically the ones that have a health halo over them, like mangoes, dates, granolas, and all the things. And that's when they learn, and they learn specifically what their body is able to metabolize and how that affects their insulin and glucose levels specifically, and weight loss in the long term.
Yeah, I love this EGM. We use it for almost all of our patients as well. You know, it's one of those things, like there's all these sleep trackings out there, like the rings and the watches, and I think this is going to be a mainstay of self quantification.
Yeah.
And you know, the more data you have that's immediately actionable, like you said, by the time your blood markers change and you find out, it's been months, right?
Yeah.
And so seeing this immediate data on how specific foods are affecting your biology at that moment, it's so incredibly game-changing.
Nothing trumps that.
Right, exactly. Like these halo foods, like you said, you know, people are eating raisins and thinking it's healthy for them. And actually
Dried mango.
Dried mango, yeah, spiking their blood sugar.
Yeah.
And even things like the order of your food, what you're eating first
Composition
and
of-
second,
yeah.
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So all those things you can kind of elucidate with the CGM. So, okay, so let's go back to gut health a little bit.
Okay.
So we're testing stool tests.
Yeah.
And what are you specifically looking for in stool tests when you're looking at them?
Those 5 aspects, really, I'm not looking for anything except for like improving the symptoms of my client. And when we do the stool test, we see which area needs improvement.
Got it.
Whether they need enzymes or probiotics, whether they need herbal antiparasitic treatments, or they need to change their diet. And the test that I do really is very holistic. We create the fasting protocol based on that. We create dietary recommendations, specific foods, anti-inflammatory foods. Some people need more pomegranates to stimulate akkermansia, and some people, depends how low they are, pomegranates might not be helping and they need a special probiotic strain, right? And based on that, we also are able to create specific probiotic recommendations because, there's so many different strains, and I'm impartial to all of them because I recommend my clients to, number 1, get most of their probiotics from fermented foods or high fiber foods. And number 3 is rotate their probiotic strains and not just do the same thing for the rest of their lives. This way you expose yourself to diversity. You asked me a good question early about gut health. myself, what I would want more people to know about is that diversity. Just because you eat broccoli and spinach once in a while, I'm sorry, but that's not enough. Diversity is very important. And that's when I teach my clients to eat horta, which is boiled dandelion greens that you could find in Greek restaurants, watercress, radicchio, or arugula, or scallions. All of those, the diversity and the variety of those herbs create a better microbiome. Specifically, if you really think of what I just mentioned, they're called bitter herbs. Those are amazing to stimulate your digestion naturally, to stimulate your enzymes, especially as we get older, and if we leave, a very high-performing lifestyle, we need to support our digesting system, and those bitter herbs really help to do it naturally.
I'm so glad you mentioned diversity, because I've always wondered, we always tell our patients you want the most gut bacteria diversity, but then how do you create that? And so the way to create that, as you're saying, is that have a diverse foundation of the vegetables and the fruits that you're eating. And that's what creates the diversity. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And that's another chapter of the Utilitarian diet. It's called seasonality. Because in nature, it's actually created perfectly. There's no such thing in nature that's just like one vegetable that grows all year round. Yeah. It doesn't exist like that in the nature. And it forces you to give other things a try or a chance. And this is one of the homeworks I do for my clients. The first consultation is usually diet specific. And I give them a homework to at least once a week to try a new vegetable.
Right. Yeah.
Try something that they haven't had in a while.
Yeah. No, that's excellent, because I heard that you have to have about 30 different kinds of vegetables per week in your diet. And it makes sense. Different colors, different categories, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then what about those people on the opposite end of this? They say that there's certain vegetables that have compounds in them that that could be harmful for your gut, things like lectins, et cetera. How do you talk about that with your clients?
I want to know your opinion too. My thing is, yes, I measure certain things, specifically histamine, and based on that, I measure advanced blood tests like for antioxidants. Based on that, I create dietary recommendations for my clients. I don't just, I hate this general recommendations that we hear on the internet, and this is what I want to, the reason why I wrote this guide to Utilitarian diet, because a lot of us hear information on the internet, but it has nothing to do with us. They're speaking, as you said, this curveball, right? They're speaking to this general population, but in reality, they're not speaking to you. And it's just more confusing and takes you further away from your true self. And the more you hear this doctor, this influencer, this dietitian, everyone is right, but in reality, everyone's giving you overwhelmingly confusing advice on different things to do. I would just focus on what feels good to you. And with that knowledge, my gold standard for finding out what's good to you is elimination diet of 21 days, right? Eliminate certain things for 21 days and then reintroduce it and then see how that feels, right? And this way you'll be able to know whether it makes the difference for you or it makes you feel sluggish or gives you a bloating feeling. So my advice, I love vegetables and I love recommending them. And when I do food sensitivity and intolerance tests, sometimes some vegetables come up, specifically nightshades or things like corn and soy. That's when I'm able to provide specific recommendations. But that's based on your body telling us, right? And when people listen to that really creates a feeling of success for them because they see how they feel better without certain things like gluten or dairy or certain vegetables. So when it comes to answer your question, my recommendation is to always listen to your body and listen to experts that help you to connect to your body more. Whether it's from testing or from this elimination diet that helps you to hear and listen your body more than instead of taking you away from yourself and just into someone else knows better than me. Let me go listen to that person.
Yeah. And, if there's one mission I have with this podcast, one of my main missions is that for all the people listening, that every person needs to realize that they are an individual. Their biology is different than everybody else's.
Bioindividuality.
Bioindividuality, exactly. And we talked a little bit earlier about the bell-shaped curve. And this is one thing that I think about every single time I talk to every single patient is where do you fit on the bell-shaped curve? knowing your biology is going to be different. Most people in the bell-shaped curve are about the same, but there's people definitely on the outsides of the bell-shaped curve that have a completely different reaction to the same foods as the people on the other side of the bell-shaped curve. And so there's no way to know unless you're tuning into your body. And now we're lucky enough to have these blood tests or stool tests and tests that a practitioner like yourself can help interpret to help us find out where we are on this bell-shaped curve. So like you said, there's a lot of talk on social media all the time of people that are promoting one type of diet or saying one vegetable is absolutely the most evil vegetable on the planet. And it might be for that one person, but it's definitely not true for everybody.
Exactly.
Right?
Thank you, doctor. I'm glad we agree on that. And that's why the first book on dieting was written 100 years ago in 1908. Yes. And 100 years later, you would think we would have an answer on what is the best diet for humans. And guess what? We're still arguing. And some of the foremost healthcare professionals still disagree with each other. And that's why I wrote my book and I trademarked the name of Utarian because I'm just tired of hearing people arguing and pointing fingers. Oh, you eat that? I thought you were a dietitian. I'm like, excuse me, or like you're a doctor, you should know better. Or I heard that on the news. You know what? Why don't we all find peace and clarity on what it is that's best for us and allow others to do the same?
I totally agree with you. And I love the title of your book, Utarian, because it really is. Every diet needs to be individualized to every single human on the planet. And you don't need to spend a lot of money to do this. A lot of people can also kind of figure this out on their own with things like the elimination diet as well. So I want to dive in. Let's talk a lot about diet. So I want to start off with, I feel like there are some overarching principles in diet that are applicable to almost everybody, right? And so one of them that I'd like to get your opinion on is eliminating ultra-processed food from our day-to-day diet for the most part, as much as you could. What do you feel about that? What are your feelings on ultra-processed food? And how do you talk to your patients about that?
This is the best approach. So I always say, as a humans, we are not a part of nature. We are nature, and we need to live in harmony with that. So I would always, when I see another superfood trending, and it just breaks my heart when I see people relying on Amazon deliveries for their nourishment. Because actually, I grew up on the farm in rural Russia, and my family was very poor, and we would grow and raise our own foods.
Wow.
So I would take care of the plants all summer long, only to see them getting fermented and pickled, so we have food during the cold winter times. Same thing with animals. I would take care of the cows and pigs and chickens, and I would see them getting slaughtered in the late fall, again, so our family has food. So I've developed this deep appreciation for this circle of life and how what food really is. It's also nature, and so are we. And when a part of the blue zones and longevity studies is living in harmony with your environment, shopping and eating locally and seasonally. And with that, almost of the blue zones are islands.
Right.
Guess what? There's no Amazon delivery. There's not even supermarkets, right? And that's when I always break it down to basics to my clients. And my biggest mission is to support local farmers and to support people who are working hard to bring all those nourishment for us that is grown locally, seasonally, and the most nutrient-dense foods. And with that, create the lifestyle, the longevity lifestyle that I call for all, not just for ourselves and our families. So to answer your question on ultra-processed foods, those were not created for our health. Those were created for the demand of urban living. Like no one has the time to cook anymore, right? Give them the processed packaged food for quick and easy nourishment. But that's, again, takes you further and further away on what your body really needs because you're choosing time and convenience and the speed of the nourishment and convenience versus the actual nutrient density. So yes, I think it's one of the easiest thing to do to avoid packaged foods and ultra-processed ones, the ones that are wrapped in plastics and has some marketing or health label on it. And the more you avoid those, the more you connect with the real food that's grown locally and has no labels on it. And sometimes even better that it has no plastic packaging on it. And that's what the opposite of ultra-processed food, the whole foods. And that's what creates a larger impact just on your own ecosystem inside of you, for your family, and for overall planetary and global health.